These are the irritating, the infuriating, and the incandescent times. Yes, I'm going on a bit of a rant. Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnston and welcome to the Interesting Times, a political comedy show that looks and laughs at the UK. Now, try and think of the worst interview you've ever seen, either in real life or on the telly. Maybe it's Boris Johnson being shown a picture of a child in hospital and suffering because of cuts he made and he puts the phone in his pocket. Or how about Boris Johnson in 2017 as Foreign Secretary trying and failing to answer the simplest of questions on Radio 4?
Bill on the courts, which I think is supposed to address some of those issues. And I think one thing in particular that we are looking at is measures to... Hang on a second.
Or this interview with Boris Johnson from the Department of Stuff Aging Well. And look out for the point towards the end where he almost tells the truth.
I am actually optimistic about what a Trump presidency could bring, because I think that when it comes to it, I think that he will not want to begin his presidency as the guy who made the Soviet Empire great again. He wants to be the president who makes America great again.
All that time, Rishi Sunak said that he could connect with the poverty-stricken in the country as he had gone without Sky TV as a kid. Or indeed any time Liz Truss opened her mouth. And then, of course, the biggie, the worst interview ever recorded, where the eighth in line to the throne said to the staff, "Put the kettle on. I'm just about to do a straightforward interview where I'm going to prove my complete innocence beyond any doubt whatsoever." Well, hold the Pizza Express, as his royal sweatiness has now been relegated to second worst interview on the BBC, or indeed anywhere. The new king is one Torsten Bell. I'm assuming the end is silent. The Labour MP for Swansea West and Pensions Minister. And you're probably thinking, Torsten? That sounds like a Tory MP. And you're also probably thinking, and he looks like a Tory MP. Well, wait till you hear him speak.
Are you okay with making people worse off?
Well, what I need is to deliver a sustainable benefit system.
Again,
when it comes to personal independence people, well, it is because 1,000 people a day...
that wasn't my question. Are you okay with making people worse off?
Well, I'm okay with building a sustainable system.
Is he really talking about making cuts to people who genuinely need it, like he's building an allotment? Also, what's this? Why is he talking like this? Is this his first interview as a human? Anyway, onwards and downwards.
In the number of people claiming PIP will slow. That's absolutely true, and I've been completely straight with you about that. So that means that some people who might have qualified won't. But that won't happen overnight. For those that are already claiming it, they won't be reassessed until the point at which they were meant to be reassessed anyway, and we're consulting on what extra support they need to be given. But people who are defending the status quo are defending a system that is writing off millions as too sick to work when many of them want to work.
And the interview just continued to go down, down, deeper and down.
We've got a benefit system that says if you can't come in and prove you're too sick to work, then you will receive an absolute minimum level of support.
Yes, we need those agoraphobic wheelchair users to come into the office.
But we are not going to write off 21-year-olds.
For those who can't, they'll be living on about 70 quid.
We are not going to write off 21-year-olds as unable to work.
For those who can't, they'll be living on about £70 a week. Could you live on 70 quid a week?
Absolutely not. Support with a disability, personal independence payments is there for that as well.
So to buy food, to pay bills,
yes.
70 quid a week?
No.
You've just told me you couldn't live on that.
Well, no, I have a mortgage to pay.
And there it is. Rock bottom. A frighteningly honest answer there. Plenty about percentages and reports, but not so much on the very real impact this is going to have for human beings, and the worry that must be giving them. But Torsten isn't alone as a Labour MP with his frankly condescending and dismissive nature. The Foreign to any Human Empathy Secretary, David Lammy, has told a cabinet that he has a family friend who probably shouldn't be on benefits. Okay, I'll say it. There might be some people on benefits who shouldn't be. But last year, the Department of Work and Pensions, who work for this government, found that fraud for PIP, personal independent payments, was so low it failed to register as a whole number. But maybe Lammy's crooked relative isn't claiming PIP. Maybe it's another benefit, like pension credit or housing benefit, both at a shocking 3.9%, or universal credit, which was a little over 10%, which is where people get paid by the taxpayer but still take a second job. David, that's different. Of course MPs are allowed second, third or 15 other jobs, and they certainly wouldn't claim money for things that they shouldn't. Well, not since the 2009 expenses scandal, which saw 392 MPs, or a little over 60%, repay money wrongfully claimed, and a further 4 prosecuted by the CPS, who was headed at the time by,
The 4 cases in which charges have been brought are as follows, and the criminal investigation is ongoing.
Whatever happened to that guy? The callousness and ridiculousness and just plain empty-headed and hard-heartedness of the benefit cuts are just mind-blowing. Firstly, the moral question of removing financial help to those that require it the most, leading to extreme hardship and more, but there's also a financial point here as well.
It's very interesting because you could say that arguably one of the most productive sources of expenditure is the dole, or whatever you call it now, universal credit, because you're only getting £200 and it's spent. It goes back into the economy.
Exactly. Money is put to its best use for the economy when it's in circulation buying goods and services. And amongst those with mobility and mental health issues who would struggle to travel far, it has the added bonus of being spent locally in local businesses. Keeping it locked away in some offshore account or hedge fund does nothing for business. Never mind the fact that in 2008, when those in the financial sector bet on red and it came up black and then went, not my problem, and we picked up the tab. I mean, maybe go see those guys before turning this country into a Victorian hellscape. And never mind the amount of right-wing arsewites complaining about people being paid to sit on their asses and not contributing to society, while simultaneously being paid to sit on their asses and not contributing to society. Yes, I'm aware of the irony in that last statement. And at the top of it all is a government that doesn't seem to understand its role, which is this, to govern. And a big part of that, some might say the biggest part of that, isn't to balance the books like you've got a shopping list and considering getting 2 extra pints of semi-skimmed. It's to look after your constituents, particularly the most vulnerable, whatever that takes. And if you don't understand that, may I respectfully suggest pissing off and allowing someone else in who does. I know and appreciate that I am healthy physically and mentally. I am also aware that that could change. And the reason that helping others less fortunate than ourselves is so vital to that is twofold. One, because there is an element of there but for the grace of God. And if the government isn't helping these people and I say nothing, if that moment comes, who will speak up for me? But there is another more fundamental point here, one which is ingrained into our psyche, into what it means to be human and what has been around hundreds of thousands of years before the first pound was even spent. And it's this: helping each other makes us feel good. It releases endorphins and it helps the species. It's one of the reasons we have become the apex predator. Looking after each other is the most natural thing in the world, which is why people that work with the most vulnerable describe it as being so rewarding. A helper's high, they call it. And it's why right-wingers are so angry all the time. It makes us feel good. Don't believe me? All right. Did you know that last Thursday was International Day of Happiness? Yeah, no, me neither. And do you know which country was voted by its citizens as being the happiest country on earth? Finland, for the 8th year in a row. Well, more and they get a free latte. And the 2 reasons given were access to nature and a strong welfare state. Yeah, By the way, we finished 23rd, which I think is fair enough. I think it's fair to say that we aren't always the vibrant fountain of positivity that we could be. But do you know who beat? The US into 24th. America, I mean the country that normally explodes in positivity. They have dropped down to their lowest ever spot. So what happened? Well, we know what happened. The guy, which has made people in the US angry. I mean really angry. This angry.
The Department of Government Efficiency that is looking at and has
What people of America see, what people of Eastern Washington see, is President Trump delivering on his promises. And so
I feel like this is not productive with everybody yelling at me. I mean, if you want to hear... Yeah.
One interaction turning so contentious, this man had to be escorted out.
You don't get to do this to us! What you're saying is I'm not going to get my way when my people are being slaughtered, and I want you to stop funding them.
If you would like to run for office, run for office.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
To me, how obsessed you are with federal government. But here's the thing.
And when was the last time you saw people get that upset about taxes? You don't, because we get it. You pay your taxes and you get services. We understand that's the way it works because we're adults with cognitive function. Sure, we don't like to see our money wasted, but this isn't waste. It's us as fortunate individuals to help those that are less fortunate. In fact, the one thing we don't want is for you to bail out people that should bail themselves out. And that's the one thing that you actually did do. To give you some idea of how mind-numbingly dumb this is, this was Kemi Badenoch at the Conservatives' local elections launch last week in front of a bunch of either paid or lobotomised people holding up signs which say, lower taxes, better services. Now, setting aside the gargantuan matter of this party being in power for 14 years, during which time they gave us austerity and the highest taxes since 1948, after the Second World War, have suddenly, in the prevailing 8 months, found a bunch of savings they're ready to put into place. Never mind that. Lower taxes, better services. I mean, how does that even work? Is she taking a pay cut? Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be against the idea. But surely, if you want to run a government, then you understand that you need good services, for which you will have to pay. You don't get better services by paying less. This is as basic an idea as is possible to get, on a par with don't forget to breathe. We all understand that, and yet this is who Starmer's on a race to the bottom with. By the way, everything I'm saying to you is already known about by this government. All of it. None of it has come as a surprise. They understand this beyond almost any doubt. So why do something that is so economically, morally, historically, and by every other measure stupid? Sticking to the manifesto of not raising taxes on working people? Please, that garbled message let out a death rattle before Christmas. Balancing the books? Laughable for reasons already explained. No government in history has grown the economy by shrinking welfare. And that's even before we get into the billions the government saves every year through unpaid carers, ballpark figure £184 billion a year, and a further £274 billion spent by the disabled themselves, and most of that will be above and beyond what able-bodied people spend because of medicines and various other adjustments that had to be done to make their lives not just workable, but livable. No, there's only one reason for this, and that is to show themselves to be prudent spenders, not to fall into the trap that Labour are first and foremost taxers, that the problem with socialism is that eventually run out of other people's money mantra. And the reasons that's so important is to convince the dark art masters and their attack dogs that it's fine. They can keep all their money because the big tax rises tend to go to the big money makers who want to keep all their money because this is a Labour government in name only. Do you want to know how screwed we are in this country? Jeremy Clarkson has the right to vote. Chizza, writing in The Sun and also being quoted here by GB News, called Starmer a Marxist. How far right do you have to be to read GB News reporting on Jeremy Clarkson's Sun column calling Keir Starmer a Marxist? You would have to be Twitter blocked by Hitler. You would have to call Stalin woke. You would have to vote for Nigel Farage. Speaking of which, Channel 4 went to Grimsby to get the opinion of some members of the great British public ahead of those local elections, to get their opinions on the party leaders.
Who would you choose to be in number 10? So all Farage and one Starmer.
It's not a particularly good sign when the only person voting for Keir Starmer is Keir Starmer. That was those that voted Labour last June. So what about those that didn't even vote?
In a word or a sentence, Nigel Farage.
Could be. Too old, he's had his moment in glory. He's been around for God knows how many years now. He's done nothing.
Wrinkly.
I like that.
He's a photo or video opportunist.
Ah, now we're getting somewhere. Hope you're watching, you tweed twit.
If you had to choose, who would you most like to be in number 10 as Prime Minister?
Oh, sorry.
Farage, Kemi, Farage. 7, Farage.
Proud to be British.
Hang on. This too old wrinkly photo or video opportunist is the guy you want in power? And proud to be British? So proud he's taken his 8th trip in 8 months since the election in which he got elected to America for a fundraiser at about the same time that other MPs were debating these horrifying cuts. And also since the election he's done 800 hours of work. Just not for his constituents. 888. The number of the twat. One thing's for certain, if Nigel does get elected, he's going to have to spend a hell of a lot more time in this country. One more reason not to vote reform. Thank you all so much for joining me today as I vented. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Please subscribe, share, comment and like, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.